The massive bridge of the flagship's stellar dominance hummed with the quiet confidence of absolute power. Commander Vex Thorne, his blue-scaled hide gleaming under the artificial lighting, leaned back in his command throne with the casual arrogance of someone who had never tasted defeat. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of his fleet, 237 vessels of pure destruction, each one capable of turning a planet into cosmic dust. So, Vex said, his voice dripping with amusement, "These, what do they call themselves again?" "Humans, Commander," replied Science Officer Kira Moss, her four eyes blinking in sequence as she consulted her datapad. A bipedal species from the third planet of a rather unremarkable yellow star. They have been expanding their territory at an alarming rate over the past 50 rotations. Tactical Officer Zorn Vex snorted, a sound like grinding metal. "Alarming? Commander, they are using chemical rockets." "Chemical rockets. My grandfather's mining equipment moves faster than their so-called warships." The bridge erupted in laughter, a chorus of alien voices finding endless humor in the primitive nature of their new targets. Vex raised one clawed hand, and the laughter died instantly. "And yet," he said, his tone shifting to mock seriousness, "the Galactic Enforcement Council has received complaints. Apparently, these hairless apes have been establishing colonies without proper permits. They have been mining asteroids without filing the correct forms. Most shocking of all." He paused for dramatic effect. "They have been exploring space without asking permission first." Communications Officer Rex Vale shifted nervously in his seat. "Commander, perhaps we should consider a formal diplomatic protest? The regulations clearly state that." "The regulations?" Vex's laugh was sharp and cold. "Rex, my dear friend, the regulations were written for civilizations that matter. These humans, they are barely past the Stone Age by galactic standards. They think faster-than-light travel is still theoretical. They believe their little solar system is the center of the universe." Kira's multiple eyes focused on her readings. "According to our intelligence, they have established exactly one research station beyond their home planet, a tiny outpost on the fourth planet from their sun. Mars, they call it. The entire facility houses fewer than 50 individuals." 50. Zorn's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Commander, I have seen bigger crews on cargo haulers." Vex stood slowly, his imposing figure casting shadows across the bridge. Through the massive viewport, stars stretched endlessly in all directions, a reminder of the vast empire that trembled at his approach. "Gentlemen, ladies, fellow enforcers," he began, his voice taking on the tone of a professor addressing particularly slow students, "we have a teaching opportunity here." He gestured toward the tactical display, where Earth's solar system appeared as a small cluster of dots. "These humans need to learn their place in the galactic order. They need to understand that expansion, colonization, and resource extraction are privileges granted by the Council, not rights claimed by primitive species." "What do you propose, Commander?" Rex asked, though the nervous tremor in his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Vex's smile revealed rows of needle-sharp teeth. "We are going to send them a message they will never forget, a demonstration of our superiority that will have them begging for forgiveness within the hour." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Every officer present had witnessed Vex's demonstrations before. Entire civilizations had learned to fear that particular smile. "The Mars Research Station," Vex continued, pointing at the tactical display with one clawed finger. "We obliterate it. Completely. Not a single molecule left intact. Then we sit back and wait for Earth to surrender unconditionally." Zorn's combat instincts kicked in immediately. "Weapons configuration, Commander? Full plasma bombardment should be sufficient for such a small target." "Sufficient?" Vex's laugh echoed through the bridge. "My dear Zorn, we are not just destroying a building. We are making a statement. I want every weapon in the fleet focused on that insignificant little outpost. I want the energy signature visible from 3 solar systems away. I want these humans to understand that their continued existence depends entirely on our mercy." Kira consulted her datapad again, her expression puzzled. Commander, our intelligence suggests that humans are quite emotional. Destroying their research station might provoke an irrational response. Irrational? Vex's amusement was infectious, spreading through the bridge crew like wildfire. What could they possibly do to us? Throw rocks? Launch their chemical rockets at our fleet? Please, Kira, give me some credit. These creatures are so primitive that they still fight wars with explosive devices. They haven't even mastered basic energy manipulation. Rex cleared his throat hesitantly. Should we perhaps warn them first? Give them a chance to evacuate? The silence that followed was so complete that the ship's ventilation system seemed deafeningly loud. Vex turned slowly to face his communications officer, his expression shifting from amusement to something far more dangerous. Rex, he said quietly, the point of a demonstration is to demonstrate. Dead humans send a much clearer message than live ones. Besides, his smile returned, colder than before, they are just humans. The galaxy won't miss them. The command console chimed softly, indicating that the fleet had reached optimal firing position. Through the viewport, Mars appeared as a small reddish dot, completely unaware of the devastating force now aimed at its surface. All ships, Vex announced, his voice carrying to every vessel in the fleet, prepare for synchronized bombardment. Target, the human research facility on Mars. Let's show these primitives what happens when they forget their place in the universe. The coordinated strike was, by any measure, a masterpiece of military precision. 237 ships fired as one, their plasma beams converging on the tiny Mars research station like the fingers of an angry god. The energy release was so massive that it briefly outshone Mars' distant sun, turning the red planet's thin atmosphere into a light show visible across half the solar system. Commander Vex Thorne watched through the main viewer with the satisfaction of an artist admiring his latest work. Where the human facility had stood moments before, there was now nothing but a perfectly spherical crater, its edges still glowing from the intense heat. The surrounding landscape had been turned into glass for kilometers in every direction. Beautiful, he murmured, clasping his hands behind his back. Absolutely beautiful. Zorn, what's our energy expenditure on that little fireworks display? Tactical Officer Zorn Vek consulted his readings with obvious pride. Less than 0.01% of fleet capacity, Commander. We could repeat that bombardment 10,000 times without needing to recharge. And the target? Complete molecular dissolution. Not even dust remains. The bridge crew exchanged satisfied glances. Several officers were already composing reports that would make them legends back at Council headquarters. The complete annihilation of human resistance in under 30 seconds would become the stuff of military academy textbooks. Science Officer Kira Moss approached the command chair, her four eyes bright with anticipation. Commander, I have prepared a communications array to receive Earth's surrender transmission. Based on historical data from similar operations, we should expect their response within, perhaps 15 minutes. Vex settled back into his throne, a picture of relaxed confidence. 15 minutes. Kira, you are being generous. These humans just watched their only off-world facility get erased from existence by forces they can't even comprehend. I will be shocked if we don't hear from them in the next 5 minutes. The communications officer Rex Vale turned from his station, barely containing his excitement. Commander, should I prepare the standard surrender acceptance protocols? The terms of occupation, tribute requirements, population reduction schedules? Rex, my friend, Vex's tone was almost paternal. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we listen to them grovel. Then we dictate terms. I want to savor this moment properly. Around the bridge, various officers were placing bets on exactly how long it would take for Earth's surrender. The general consensus seemed to be somewhere between 3 and 8 minutes, with most favoring the shorter time frame. You know, Kira said thoughtfully, I have been studying human psychology in preparation for this operation. Fascinating species, really. They have this peculiar tendency toward what they call emotional responses. Fear, panic, desperation. I expect their surrender message will be quite entertaining. Vex chuckled. Emotional responses. How charmingly primitive. What exactly are you expecting, Kira? Oh, the usual, she replied, consulting her data pad. Probably lots of pleading, some crying, maybe threats they can't possibly carry out. Humans are apparently very vocal when they are terrified. Their historical records show they often become completely irrational when faced with superior force. Zorn leaned forward from his tactical station. Commander, do you think they will try to negotiate? Offer us resources, technology, perhaps their surrender in exchange for being allowed to survive as a slave species? Negotiate? Vex's laughter was infectious. Zorn, what could they possibly offer us? Their chemical rockets? Their primitive computers? They don't have anything we want except their compliance. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one feeling like a small victory. The alien officers watched their chronometers with growing amusement, imagining the panic that must be spreading through Earth's command centers. Somewhere down there, human leaders were probably screaming at their advisors, demanding explanations for the impossible destruction they had just witnessed. Commander, Rex reported, I'm detecting massive increases in electromagnetic traffic from Earth. Their communication networks are operating at maximum capacity. Excellent, Vex purred. They are probably trying to figure out what hit them, gathering their pathetic military leaders for an emergency session, arguing about whether to fight or surrender. He paused, savoring the image. Tell me, Rex, how long do you think it takes 50 billion humans to collectively realize they are completely outmatched? Based on their historical response times to global crises, Kira interjected, I'd estimate another 6 to 8 minutes before they achieve any kind of consensus. Perfect, Vex said, rising from his chair and beginning to pace the bridge. That gives me time to prepare my response. Something appropriately condescending, I think. Maybe a brief lecture on the benefits of galactic citizenship, the importance of following council regulations. The bridge hummed with quiet satisfaction as the alien fleet waited for their inevitable victory. Every officer present knew they were witnessing history in the making, the moment humanity learned its true place in the galactic hierarchy. Any moment now, Vex murmured, his eyes fixed on the communications panel. Any moment now, they will realize that resistance is impossible, and we will have ourselves another conquered species. The chronometer continued its steady countdown toward what every alien aboard considered humanity's inevitable surrender. 3 hours had passed since the Mars facility had been reduced to superheated glass, and the bridge of the stellar dominance was beginning to feel less like a victory celebration and more like a very awkward waiting room. Commander Vex Thorne had stopped pacing 30 minutes ago and was now drumming his claws against his command chair with increasing irritation. Rex, he said for the 7th time in the past hour, check the communications array again. Communications Officer Rex Vale sighed and ran the same diagnostic he'd been running every 10 minutes. All systems functioning perfectly. Commander. Our receivers are operating at peak efficiency. Our transmitters are broadcasting on all known human frequencies, and our translation matrix is working flawlessly. Science Officer Kira Moss looked up from her console, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sure sign of confusion among her species. Commander, this is unusual. In my study of over 300 first contact scenarios, I have never encountered a species that simply ignored a demonstration of superior firepower. Maybe they didn't see it, suggested Tactical Officer Zorn Vek, though his tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. Perhaps their detection equipment is even more primitive than we thought. Vex's laugh was considerably less amused than it had been 3 hours earlier. Zorn, we lit up their entire solar system. Every radio telescope, every optical sensor, every piece of junk they have floating around out there would have detected that energy discharge. Helen Keller could have seen what we did to Mars. Who's Helen Keller? Kira asked. I don't know, it's something humans say, Vex snapped. The point is, they saw it. They had to have seen it. Rex turned from his station, his expression growing more perplexed by the hour. Commander, I have been monitoring their communications networks continuously. There's definitely activity. Massive spikes in data transmission, emergency broadcast protocols activated across their entire planet. They are talking to each other. They are just not talking to us. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of machinery and the increasingly aggressive tapping of Vex's claws. Several junior officers exchanged glances, each one hoping someone else would volunteer an explanation for this unprecedented situation. Perhaps, Kira said carefully, they are still in shock. Some species require extended processing time when confronted with evidence of superior civilizations. 3 hours? Vex's voice was climbing toward what his crew recognized as his dangerous register. Kira, bacteria have faster response times than this. Thorne consulted his tactical display, frowning at the readings. Commander, our long-range sensors are detecting increased activity around Earth. Ship movements, energy signatures building in various locations. It looks like they are mobilizing. Mobilizing? Vex stood abruptly, his massive frame casting new shadows across the bridge. Mobilizing what? Their chemical rockets? Are they planning to throw rocks at us? Rex cleared his throat nervously. Should I send another message, Commander? Perhaps they didn't understand the first one. Another message? Vex's tone was pure acid. Rex, we vaporized their Mars base. That message was written in the universal language of you are about to die. How much clearer can we be? But even as he spoke, Vex found himself nodding. Fine. Send them another transmission. Make this one less subtle? Rex's fingers danced over his console, composing what he hoped would be his final communication with these inexplicably stubborn humans. Attention, primitive beings of Earth, he began, his voice carrying across the void toward the blue planet. You have witnessed our power. Your Mars facility has been obliterated as a demonstration of our superiority. You will surrender immediately and submit to Galactic Council authority, or we will begin systematic destruction of your planet's infrastructure. You have 1 hour to respond. The transmission lanced across space at light speed, carrying with it the authority of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Rex monitored the signal as it reached Earth's communication satellites, confirmed reception by multiple ground stations, and was promptly ignored. Well? Vex demanded. They received it, Commander. Perfect signal clarity, properly decoded by their equipment. No technical issues whatsoever. And their response? Nothing, sir. Radio silence. Kira's 4 eyes were now blinking in a complex pattern that suggested deep perplexity. Commander, I'm detecting something odd in their electromagnetic emissions. Their power grids are fluctuating in unusual patterns, almost as if they are redirecting massive amounts of energy toward something. Something? Vex's patience was wearing dangerously thin. Kira, could you be more specific? Are they powering up weapons? Charging some kind of defensive system? That's just it, Commander. The energy patterns don't match any known weapons technology. They are not building up defensive shields. It's almost like they are conducting some kind of massive scientific experiment. Zorn's tactical display suddenly erupted in alerts. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy discharges from the human sun. Solar activity has increased by 300% in the last hour. Solar activity? Vex turned to stare at the tactical display. What does that have to do with anything? Probably nothing, Zorn replied, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Stars are naturally unstable. The timing is likely coincidental. Rex tried once more to raise Earth on emergency frequencies, broadcasting on every available channel. The response was the same, absolute, infuriating silence. Somewhere down there, 50 billion humans were apparently going about their day as if the most powerful fleet in galactic history hadn't just demonstrated their complete vulnerability. Commander, Kira said slowly, what if they are not ignoring us? What if they are preparing something? The bridge fell silent as that unthinkable possibility settled over the crew. Primitive species weren't supposed to prepare responses to overwhelming force. They were supposed to surrender, beg for mercy, or die trying to fight with hopelessly inadequate weapons. They certainly weren't supposed to ignore the most powerful military demonstration in galactic history and start playing with their sun. The first alarm chimed softly at Science Officer Kira Moss's station, a pleasant tone that completely failed to match the impossible readings scrolling across her display. She blinked all 4 eyes in rapid succession, cleared her screen, and ran the scan again. The results were identical. "Commander," she called out, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that made every head on the bridge turn in her direction. "I'm detecting some very unusual energy patterns from the human star." Vex Thorne was in no mood for scientific puzzles. "Unusual how?" "Speak plainly, Kira." "The star's magnetic field is fluctuating in patterns that shouldn't be naturally possible." She paused, studying her readings with growing alarm. "Commander, magnetic field variations of this magnitude should take decades to develop. What I'm seeing here is happening in real time." Tactical Officer Zorn VK pulled up his own sensor array, cross-referencing Kira's data with his weapons detection systems. Confirmed. Solar activity has increased by 800% in the last 30 minutes alone. But that's not the strange part. "There's a stranger part?" Vex demanded. Zorn's mandibles clicked nervously. "The activity isn't random, Commander. It's structured, organized, almost like." He trailed off, staring at his display in disbelief. "Like what, Zorn?" "Like someone is controlling it." The bridge fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals or the moments before executions. Every alien present knew the fundamental laws of stellar physics. Stars were massive, chaotic fusion reactors governed by forces so enormous that entire civilizations were considered insignificant by comparison. The idea that any species could manipulate stellar magnetic fields was not just impossible, it was laughable. Kira's voice cut through the silence like a laser through hull plating. "Commander, I need to show you something." Main screen. The view screen shifted to display a real-time analysis of the human sun. What they saw defied every principle of astrophysics that any of them had learned in their respective academies. The star's surface was churning with activity, massive prominences reaching out into space like grasping fingers. But more disturbing than the activity itself was its pattern. The solar prominences were moving in coordination. "This is impossible," breathed Rex Vale, his communication equipment forgotten. "Stars don't behave like this. Magnetic field manipulation on this scale would require technology that..." He stopped, his face going pale. "Technology that what?" Vex's voice was dangerously quiet. "Technology that doesn't exist. Commander, what we are looking at would require the ability to manipulate fundamental forces on a planetary scale. The energy requirements alone would be equivalent to the entire power output of our fleet for several years." Kira's readings suddenly spiked, her console erupting in warning signals. "Commander, massive magnetic field restructuring detected. The star is building towards some kind of coronal mass ejection, but the trajectory is..." She stopped, her 4 eyes widening in perfect synchronization. "The trajectory is what, Kira?" "Aimed. Commander, the solar activity is building toward a directed coronal mass ejection, aimed directly at our fleet." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Coronal mass ejections were among the most powerful phenomena in any solar system, capable of disrupting electronics across light years and cooking anything unfortunate enough to be caught in their path. The idea that any species could aim such a thing was beyond impossible. It was terrifying. Vex found his voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "You are telling me that these primitive humans, these chemical rocket-flying, planet-bound apes, are preparing to shoot our fleet with their own sun?" "That appears to be exactly what they are doing, Commander." Communications Officer Rex Vale's equipment suddenly crackled to life. After hours of silence, Earth was finally responding. The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its casual confidence. "Attention, Galactic Enforcement Council vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Martinez of Earth Defense Command. You have exactly 10 minutes to vacate our solar system before we demonstrate why threatening humanity was the worst mistake your species has ever made. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Did she just? Zorn began. Give us an ultimatum, Vex finished. Yes, she did. Kira's sensors screamed as the solar activity reached new, unprecedented levels. As Commander, whatever they are doing, it's accelerating. Energy output from their star has increased by 1,200%. At this rate, the coronal mass ejection will be ready to launch in. She calculated quickly, approximately 8 minutes. 8 minutes? Rex's voice cracked. Commander, our fastest ships would need at least 20 minutes to clear the system's gravitational influence. Vex stared at the tactical display, watching as their sensors tracked the impossible buildup of stellar energy. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered Kira's earlier comment about humans being emotional and irrational when threatened. Apparently, their definition of irrational included weaponizing their own sun. Commander, Zorn said quietly, orders? For the first time in his military career, Commander Vex Thorne found himself facing an enemy response that wasn't covered in any tactical manual. How exactly did one fight opponents who could turn stars into weapons? What possible defense existed against a species crazy enough to threaten their own solar system's stability just to make a point? 7 minutes, Commander, Kira announced, her voice tight with disbelief. Whatever impossible thing they are doing, it's almost ready. The view screen showed Earth hanging peacefully in space, a small blue dot that had somehow become the most dangerous object in the galaxy. 50 billion humans were down there, calmly preparing to demonstrate that resistance to superior force sometimes meant redefining what superior force actually meant. 6 minutes, Commander. Vex Thorne, conqueror of 17 star systems and terror of 3 galactic quadrants, realized that for the first time in his life, he was genuinely, completely, and utterly afraid. 5 minutes, Commander. Kira's voice cracked as she announced the countdown, her scientific composure finally shattering under the weight of impossibility. The bridge of the stellar dominance exploded into chaos. Officers who had maintained perfect military discipline through countless battles were now shouting over each other, their voices rising in panic as every fundamental assumption about the universe collapsed around them. All ships, emergency scatter pattern. Vex roared into his fleet communications, his authoritative voice barely cutting through the cacophony. Maximum acceleration. Get us out of this system now. Across the fleet, 237 vessels of the Galactic Enforcement Council suddenly found themselves in the most desperate retreat of their collective careers. Engines that had been running at cruising speed screamed to life at maximum burn, sending vibrations through every hull as captains pushed their ships beyond safe operational limits. Commander. Tactical Officer Zorn Vex's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a machine gun. The fleet is responding, but our fastest escape velocity puts us at 23 minutes minimum to clear the system's gravitational influence. Even if we burn out every engine core, we can't make it in time. 4 minutes. Kira announced, her 4 eyes locked on displays that showed the human sun building toward an energy release that shouldn't have been possible in any known universe. Communications Officer Rex Vale was frantically cycling through emergency protocols, his fingers dancing across his console as distress calls flooded in from every ship in the fleet. Commander, I'm receiving panic transmissions from across the Armada. Captain Dex of the Iron Fang is requesting permission to abandon ship. Admiral Court wants to know if we should prepare surrender broadcasts. The science vessel Voidwalker is asking if this is some kind of temporal anomaly because their instruments insist that controlled stellar manipulation is physically impossible. It is impossible. Vex slammed his fist against his command chair, the impact echoing through the bridge. Kira, explain to me how a species that still uses chemical propulsion is manipulating the magnetic field of their own star. Science Officer Kira Moss was cycling through every database, every scientific theory, every piece of advanced physics she had ever studied. Her console was a blur of calculations and cross-references, but every answer she found led to the same impossible conclusion. Commander, there's no precedent for this in any galactic civilization. stellar engineering on this scale would require technology at least 1,000 years beyond what our intelligence reports indicated humans possessed. The energy manipulation alone suggests they have mastered fundamental force control that our most advanced species are still researching. 3 minutes. The countdown was relentless, each announcement driving home the reality that they were trapped by laws of physics they couldn't escape. Zorn's tactical display was now showing the futile mathematics of their situation. Red lines traced projected escape routes, all of them extending far beyond the time they had remaining. Commander, should we attempt to return fire? If we concentrate all fleet weapons on their planet. And accomplish what? Vex's laugh was bitter and desperate. Zorn, they are using their own sun as a weapon. What exactly do you think our plasma cannons are going to accomplish against opponents who play with stellar-level forces? Rex's communication array suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission. The same calm, professional voice that had delivered humanity's ultimatum was back, and somehow her complete lack of panic made everything infinitely more terrifying. Galactic Council vessels. This is Admiral Martinez again. We are detecting your attempts to flee the system. Please note that our solar engineering allows for precise targeting at light-speed velocity. Your current evasive maneuvers are noted and have been compensated for in our trajectory calculations. The transmission continued with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. We strongly recommend you stop wasting fuel and prepare for impact. Your ship's defensive capabilities have been analyzed and found inadequate. Earth Defense Command out. 2 minutes. Kira's voice was now pure terror. Rex stared at his communications console in disbelief. Commander, she just told us that they have already calculated our evasive maneuvers. They are saying the solar flare is locked onto our fleet regardless of where we go. That's impossible, Vex whispered, but even as he said it, he was studying the tactical display. The projected path of the coronal mass ejection was indeed shifting, adjusting its trajectory to match their fleet's desperate escape attempts. Zorn's voice was hollow as he reported the unthinkable. Commander, our sensors confirm it. The solar flare's trajectory is actively tracking our movement. They are not just firing a star at us, they are steering it. How? Vex's question was directed at the universe itself, a desperate plea for some explanation that would make sense. How is any of this possible? Kira looked up from her console, her scientific training finally providing a terrifying insight. Commander, what if our intelligence was wrong? What if humans aren't primitive at all? What if they have been hiding their true technological capabilities? 1 minute. The countdown was now a death knell. Across the fleet, alien crews were praying to gods from a dozen different worlds, sending final messages to loved ones, when staring in disbelief at sensor readings that defied everything they thought they knew about the universe. Ships that had conquered star systems were now fleeing in terror from a species they had dismissed as barely civilized. 30 seconds. Kira's voice was barely audible over the sound of alarms blaring across the bridge. Vex Thorne looked out at the stars that had always represented his domain, his empire, his destiny. Somewhere among those distant lights was the homeworld where he had been born, where monuments celebrated his victories, but where he had been considered one of the greatest military minds of his generation. Now he was about to be destroyed by apes who had somehow learned to throw suns. 15 seconds. Through the chaos, one thought cut through Vex's mind with terrible clarity. Humanity hadn't just refused to surrender to superior force. They had redefined what superior force meant. 10 seconds. 5. Commander, impact imminent. The last thing Commander Vex Thorne saw before the universe turned white was Earth, hanging peacefully in space like a small blue marble. A small blue marble that had just taught the galaxy's most powerful military force the difference between having advanced technology and being truly dangerous. Then the weaponized star arrived, traveling at the speed of light with the precision of a guided missile. The first thing that hit the Galactic Enforcement Council fleet wasn't the solar flare itself, but the electromagnetic pulse that preceded it. In an instant, every sophisticated targeting system, every advanced sensor array, every piece of technology that made the fleet superior to anything in known space simply stopped working. Commander Vex Thorne felt the stellar dominance shudder as backup systems kicked in, while emergency power routing through secondary conduits as the ship's primary computer cores went dark. Around him, the bridge plunged into chaos as displays flickered, died, and came back online, showing nothing but static. What just happened? He shouted over the sound of alarms blaring from every console. Science Officer Kira Moss was frantically working with manual instruments, her face illuminated by the eerie glow of emergency lighting. Electromagnetic cascade failure across all systems. The pulse wiped out our primary electronics before the flare even reached us. Then the real monster arrived. The solar flares struck the fleet with the force of a miniature star. That's a concentrated beam of stellar plasma and magnetic fury that turned space itself into a hellscape of radiation and destruction. Vex watched through the flickering main viewer as the coronal mass ejection tore through his armada like a celestial buzzsaw through tissue paper. The first ships to be caught in the direct path of the flare simply vanished. The Iron Fang, a dreadnought that had pulverized entire planetary defense networks, was there one moment and gone the next, its hull vaporized so completely that even wreckage was impossible. The Void Walker lasted slightly longer, its specialized science vessel shielding holding for perhaps 3 seconds before the ship folded in on itself like aluminum foil in a furnace. Commander. Tactical Officer Zorn Vex's voice was raw with panic as he struggled with manual controls. We are losing ships faster than I can count. The flare is cooking everything in its path. The stellar dominance was positioned at the edge of the formation, and far enough from the primary impact zone to avoid instant annihilation but close enough to feel the full terror of humanity's impossible weapon. The ship's hull groaned and buckled as waves of magnetic energy washed over them, the advanced alloys that had withstood plasma bombardments from entire planetary defense grids suddenly proving as fragile as paper against the raw power of a controlled star. Communications Officer Rex Vale was shouting into his emergency transmitter, trying to coordinate what was left of the fleet. All ships, all ships. Emergency scatter, repeat, emergency scatter. The flare is tracking multiple targets simultaneously. Because that was the most terrifying part of all. This wasn't just a massive, uncontrolled burst of stellar energy. The humans had somehow crafted their solar weapon to split into multiple focused beams, each one pursuing fleeing ships with the relentless precision of guided missiles made from star fire. Vex watched in horrified fascination as the Thunderhawk attempted to escape the system at maximum burn. The vessel was one of their fastest scouts, capable of outrunning most pursuit fighters. The solar flare simply adjusted its trajectory and overtook the fleeing ship as if it were standing still. The Thunderhawk lasted exactly long enough for its crew to scream a final transmission before being reduced to expanding plasma. Commander. Kira's voice carried a note of scientific disbelief that somehow made everything worse. The flare is exhibiting impossible characteristics. It's maintaining coherence across multiple light minutes of space while simultaneously dividing into targeted streams. This violates every known law of plasma physics. The stellar dominance lurched violently as a tendril of the solar flare grazed their starboard hull. Emergency systems screamed warnings as outer hull plating simply evaporated, the ship's defensive shields proving as effective as soap bubbles against a blowtorch. Through the ship's internal communications, Vex could hear damage reports flooding in from every section. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Radiation levels spiking beyond safe parameters. Engineering reports primary power conduits are melting. Medical bay is overwhelmed with radiation exposure cases. Zorn's tactical display was now more red than any other color, each red blip representing a ship that had been there moments before and was now drifting debris. Commander, we have lost 60% of the fleet. The remaining ships are scattered across the system, most with critical damage. But the worst part wasn't the destruction itself. The worst part was the precision. The humans weren't just unleashing raw stellar fury, they were sculpting it, controlling it, using their own sun like a master craftsman uses a tool. Ships that tried to surrender by powering down their weapons were left untouched. Vessels that continued to maneuver aggressively were hunted down with surgical precision. The Night Terror, flagship of Admiral Court's assault wing, made the mistake of trying to return fire. Its plasma cannons charged and locked onto Earth, preparing to deliver a retaliatory strike. The response was immediate and absolute. A focused beam of solar plasma, no wider than the ship itself, reached across space at light speed and deleted the Night Terror from existence with such thoroughness that its destruction didn't even leave an afterglow. "They are not just attacking us," Rex whispered, his face pale as he monitored the devastation. "They are making choices, deciding who lives and who dies based on our actions." Vex found his voice, though it came out as little more than a croak. "Status report. How many ships do we have left?" Kira consulted her emergency sensors, her 4 eyes reflecting the horror of their situation. 78 vessels remaining, Commander. Most with critical damage. The flare is beginning to dissipate, but its job is essentially complete. The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of emergency repairs and the distant screaming of hull metal contracting as it cooled from near-melting temperatures. Through the main viewer, space itself seemed to glow with residual radiation, the aftermath of humanity's demonstration painted across the cosmos in colors that hurt to look at. "Commander," Zorn said quietly, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth." The same calm, professional voice that had delivered humanity's ultimatum filled the bridge, but now it carried undertones of absolute authority that made every alien present want to grovel. The Galactic Enforcement Council survivors. "This is Admiral Martinez. Your fleet has been reduced to approximately 30% operational capacity. Your weapons have been analyzed and found inadequate. Your defensive systems have been tested and found insufficient. Your escape capabilities have been evaluated and found wanting." The transmission paused, letting the weight of complete defeat settle over them. "You now have a choice. You can continue to threaten Earth and face complete annihilation, or you can withdraw from our solar system and never return. We will give you exactly 1 hour to make your decision and begin your withdrawal. Choose wisely." As the transmission ended, Vex Thorne looked around his devastated bridge at the remnants of what had been the galaxy's most feared military force. They had come to teach primitive humans their place in the cosmic order. Instead, they had learned something far more terrifying. Sometimes the primitives are the ones who decide what civilization actually means. The emergency conference room aboard the Stellar Dominance looked like a field hospital after a particularly brutal battle. Half the chairs were empty, their intended occupants now part of the expanding debris field that had once been the galaxy's most feared armada. The surviving officers who could attend did so with visible injuries, radiation burns, and the shell-shocked expressions of beings who had witnessed the impossible. Commander Vex Thorne sat at the head of the table, his once pristine uniform torn and stained with coolant fluid from damaged conduits. His claws drummed nervously against the metal surface as he waited for his science team to compile their preliminary analysis of what had just destroyed his fleet. Science Officer Kira Moss entered the room carrying a datapad that seemed to weigh more than it should. Her 4 eyes were bloodshot from staring at sensor readings that defied explanation, and her normally steady hands trembled as she placed the device on the table. "Report," Vex commanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "Commander," Kira began, her voice hoarse from hours of shouting over emergency alarms, "what we witnessed was not a natural solar phenomenon. It was advanced stellar engineering of a type that our most optimistic projections suggested wouldn't be possible for another 3,000 years. She activated the datapad's holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional reconstruction of the solar flare that had decimated their forces. The humans didn't just redirect existing solar activity, Commander, they created it. They artificially induced coronal mass ejection through precise manipulation of their star's magnetic field lines. Tactical Officer Zorn Vec, his left arm in an emergency medical sling, leaned forward with disbelief. "How is that possible? Our intelligence reports showed they were still using chemical rockets for space travel." "But that's just it," Kira replied, her scientific mind struggling to process the implications. "Our intelligence was deliberately misdirected. While we were watching their primitive space programs, They were developing technology that makes our most advanced systems look like children's toys. She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on energy patterns that had been recorded during the attack. Look at these magnetic field manipulations, Commander. The precision required to create targeted, steerable solar flares suggests they have mastered controlled fusion at a planetary scale. They are not just using their sun as a weapon, they are conducting it like a symphony orchestra. Our communications officer Rex Vale spoke up from his position at the table, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander, I have been analyzing their communication patterns during the attack. The coordination required to execute what they did, they weren't just prepared for our arrival. They were ready for it decades ago. Decades? Vex's claws stopped drumming. Rex nodded gravely. The infrastructure required for stellar engineering on this scale doesn't get built overnight. The magnetic field generators, the quantum computers needed for the calculations, the energy distribution networks, Commander. They have been preparing for this kind of conflict since before our species even knew they existed. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Every alien present was remembering their casual dismissal of human technology, their laughter at chemical rockets, their assumption that a species confined to one star system posed no threat to galactic civilization. Kira cleared her throat and continued her report. There's more, Commander. I have been cross-referencing our sensor data with historical observations of their solar system. For the past 50 years, there have been subtle anomalies in their star's behavior. Microfluctuations in solar output, unusual magnetic field variations, unexplained coronal activity. They have been testing, Vex realized with growing horror. Exactly. What we witnessed wasn't their first attempt at stellar manipulation. It was the culmination of decades of research, development, and experimentation. They have been quietly turning their entire solar system into a weapon while we thought they were playing with rockets. Thorne shifted uncomfortably in his chair. But why hide it? If they possessed this kind of technology, why not reveal it? Why continue the pretense of being primitive? Rex answered that question with the flat certainty of someone who had spent hours analyzing human communication patterns. Because, Zorn, they were studying us. Every time we dismissed them as primitive, every intelligence report that cataloged their limited capabilities, every casual assumption about their technological development, they were learning about us while we learned nothing about them. The horror of it was beginning to sink in. The Galactic Enforcement Council, the most advanced military organization in known space, had been completely outmaneuvered by opponents they had considered barely above animals. Kira brought up another display, this one showing energy signatures from various points around the human solar system. Commander, our post-attack scans are detecting massive installations throughout their system. The orbital platforms we never noticed because they were disguised as asteroids. Energy collectors positioned around their star that our sensors dismissed as natural phenomena. Deep space monitoring stations that have probably been tracking our fleet since we entered their local region. How many? Vex asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Hundreds, Commander. Possibly thousands. They have militarized their entire solar system without us ever realizing it. While we were counting their chemical rockets, they were building the infrastructure to turn their sun into artillery. The conference room's emergency lighting flickered, a reminder that their own advanced technology was still struggling to recover from humanity's electromagnetic demonstration. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. Rex pulled up his own analysis, showing communication intercepts from before the attack. Commander, I have been reviewing their transmissions from the past several years, hidden in routine scientific data. I'm finding evidence of coordination between research facilities we thought were separate institutions. What we interpreted as academic competition was actually massive collaborative effort. They have been unified in this project for decades, Kira added. Every major government on their planet has been contributing resources to stellar engineering research. While we assumed they were too primitive for global cooperation, they were pooling their entire species' scientific capabilities into developing star-level weapons. Vex stood slowly, his imposing frame casting shadows across the damaged conference room. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see the twisted remains of ships that had conquered star systems, now reduced to drifting scrap by opponents who had supposedly never left their home planet. Status report on remaining fleet capabilities, he commanded. Zorn consulted his tactical datapad, though most of his readings came from manual instruments since their main computers were still recovering. 78 ships operational, most with critical damage. Our weapons systems are functioning at maybe 30% capacity. Our sensors are still recalibrating from the electromagnetic pulse. Commander, we are in no condition to continue any kind of military operation. And if we tried to attack their planet directly? The silence that followed was answer enough. Kira finally spoke what everyone was thinking. Commander, they just demonstrated the ability to aim their sun at moving targets across interplanetary distances. If we approach their planet, they could probably focus that entire stellar output into a beam narrow enough to cook us all individually. Vex turned to stare out at the stars, each one now representing not conquest and expansion, but the possibility that somewhere out there, other species might possess capabilities beyond the Council's understanding. Recommendations? He asked quietly. Rex spoke first. Immediate withdrawal from the system, Commander. A complete information quarantine about this engagement. If word gets out that humans can weaponize stars, it could destabilize the entire galactic order. Zorn nodded agreement. We classify this encounter at the highest levels. No species can know that stellar engineering is possible. The psychological impact alone could shatter the Council's authority. But it was Kira who delivered the most terrifying assessment of all. Commander, I recommend we add Earth to the forbidden approach list, not as a restricted zone, but as an active threat to galactic civilization. Because what we discovered today isn't just that humans are more advanced than we thought. She paused, her 4 eyes reflecting the fear that every alien in the room was feeling. We discovered that there might be other species out there who are hiding capabilities that could make our entire understanding of power and technology irrelevant. Earth just taught us that the universe is far more dangerous than we ever imagined. The retreat from the Sol system was the most humiliating experience in the recorded history of the Galactic Enforcement Council. 78 battered ships, their hulls scarred by stellar fire and their crews broken by impossible defeat, limped away from Earth at the maximum speed their damaged engines could manage. Behind them, they left the twisted wreckage of what had once been the galaxy's most feared armada, now serving as a monument to the dangers of underestimating species that played with stars. Commander Vex Thorne sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the communication console that would soon carry the most important message of his career. Around him, the bridge of the stellar dominance bore the scars of humanity's demonstration, melted conduits, cracked viewports, and the acrid smell of fried electronics that served as a constant reminder of how completely they had been outmatched. Communications array restored to minimum operational capacity. Commander, reported Rex Vale, his voice hollow with exhaustion. We have a clear channel to Council headquarters. Vex nodded slowly, his claws drumming against his chair as he composed the words that would change galactic civilization forever. How did one explain that everything the Council believed about power, technology, and superiority had just been proven catastrophically wrong? Open the channel, he commanded. The holographic image of High Counselor Dar Vectus materialized above the communication console, his expression shifting from curiosity to alarm as he took in the damage visible on the bridge behind Vex. Commander Thorne, your scheduled report is 7 hours overdue. What is the status of your enforcement action against the human primitive? High Counselor Vex interrupted, his voice carrying a weight that made Dar's words die in his throat. I am formally requesting that Earth be immediately classified as a Class X forbidden zone. No Council vessel is to approach that system under any circumstances. No enforcement actions are to be contemplated. No contact of any kind is to be attempted. Dar's alien features shifted into an expression of confusion. Commander, what exactly happened out there? Your fleet was tasked with a simple demonstration against chemical rocket primitives. Vex's laugh was bitter and broken. My counselor, the humans weaponized their sun. They aimed a controlled solar flare at our fleet and destroyed 60% of our vessels with the precision of guided missiles. Our chemical rocket primitives have been secretly developing stellar engineering technology for decades while deliberately misdirecting our intelligence. The silence that followed stretched across light years, broken only by the steady hum of damaged ship systems struggling to maintain basic operations. "That's impossible," Dar finally whispered. "Tell that to the 159 ships that no longer exist," Vex replied grimly. "High Counselor, I am uploading our complete sensor logs to Council archives. Every energy reading, every impossible manipulation of stellar magnetic fields, every demonstration that humans can control forces we didn't even know were controllable." Science Officer Kira Moss stepped forward, her four eyes reflecting the trauma of witnessing the impossible. "High Counselor, with your permission, I'd like to add that our preliminary analysis suggests this capability has been under development for at least 50 years. While we were dismissing them as primitive, they were conducting secret tests, building hidden infrastructure, and preparing for exactly the kind of confrontation we initiated." Dar's image flickered as the transmission struggled with damaged equipment. "Commander, are you telling me that a single planet species has technology that surpasses our most advanced capabilities?" "High Counselor," Vex said slowly, "I'm telling you that we just discovered the universe is full of species we don't understand at all. If humans can hide stellar engineering capabilities behind a facade of primitive chemical rockets, what else might be hiding among the species we have dismissed as irrelevant?" The implications hung in space like a death sentence for galactic civilization as they knew it. Every assumption about technological development, every casual dismissal of primitive species, every confident assertion of Council superiority had just been vaporized along with 60% of their fleet. Tactical Officer Zorn Vecke cleared his throat and stepped into the hologram's range. "High Counselor, I formally recommend a complete intelligence review of all species currently classified as primitive or developing. Our threat assessment protocols have been proven catastrophically inadequate." Dar nodded slowly, his expression showing the weight of reshaping an entire galactic worldview. "Commander Thorne, what was humanity's final communication to your fleet?" Vex consulted his notes, though the words were burned into his memory forever. "Admiral Martinez informed us that they had analyzed our weapons and found them inadequate, tested our defenses and found them insufficient, and evaluated our escape capabilities and found them wanting. She gave us 1 hour to withdraw from their system and never return. And their current status? Monitoring our retreat and probably laughing at us," Vex admitted with painful honesty. "My counselor, they didn't just defeat us. They demonstrated that our entire understanding of military superiority is based on technologies they mastered decades ago and then surpassed." Dar was quiet for a long moment, processing the complete destruction of everything the Council thought it knew about galactic civilization. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone making decisions that would echo through history. Effective immediately, Earth is classified as Class X forbidden. No approach without specific High Council authorization. Intelligence Division is tasked with complete review of all species assessments. Military Command will implement new protocols for first contact scenarios. He paused, staring directly at Vex through the holographic connection. "Commander, this information is classified at the highest levels. If word spreads that stellar engineering is possible, it could destabilize every government in the galaxy." Vex nodded grimly. "Understood, High Counselor. Though I suspect it's only a matter of time before other species begin asking why a single-planet civilization is suddenly forbidden territory. We will handle those questions when they arise. For now, return to base for debriefing and medical treatment. And Commander?" Dar's expression softened slightly. "This wasn't your failure. This was the entire Council's failure to understand that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that look like prey." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence except for the steady hum of life support systems and the distant sound of repair crews working to keep their ship functional. Communications Officer Rex Vale spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander, are we really going to classify an entire star system as forbidden because of one demonstration? Vex turned to look out the main viewer, where Earth was now just another distant star among millions. But he knew that Blue Dot would haunt galactic civilization forever, a reminder that somewhere out there, 50 billion humans were calmly going about their day, secure in the knowledge that they had just redefined what it meant to be dangerous. Rex, he said quietly, we are not classifying Earth as forbidden because of one demonstration. We are classifying it as forbidden because we just learned that humanity doesn't fight back with weapons or ships or armies. He stood slowly, his imposing frame casting shadows across the damaged bridge as the full weight of their defeat finally settled over him. They fight back with stars, Rex, and that makes them the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Behind them, invisible in the distance, Earth continued its peaceful orbit around a sun that had just become the most feared weapon in galactic history. And somewhere on that small blue world, Admiral Sarah Martinez was probably already working on improvements.